Picture this. It's 1981. The Cold War is raging, and a truly shocking proposal about nuclear launch codes is brought forward. Now, you might be wondering, what does nuclear war have to do with you skipping the gym? Well, this proposal perfectly and honestly, kind of terrifyingly, illustrates the ultimate secret to human behavior. So if you've ever struggled with consistency or watched your motivation just completely evaporate after a few days, stick with me. The core psychology we're unpacking in today's explainer is going to change how you look at discipline forever.
To really understand why we fail at our own personal goals, we have to look at a problem of absolute global proportions. Roger Fisher, who was this brilliant Harvard negotiation expert, noticed a terrifying reality. He realized that a sitting president had access to launch codes that could wipe out millions of people, but that president would never actually have to see a single person die. Because the victims are thousands of miles away, the action of pushing the button is completely detached from the visceral, immediate human consequence.
So Fisher suggested something incredibly radical. He proposed putting the nuclear launch codes in a little capsule, and then literally implanting that capsule right next to the heart of a human volunteer. This volunteer would carry a heavy butcher knife and accompany the president everywhere. If the president ever wanted to fire nuclear weapons, Fisher argued, he would have to personally take that knife and kill that innocent volunteer first. Blood on the White House carpet, the reality of death brought instantly home. When Fisher suggested this, his friends at the Pentagon were absolutely horrified. They called it terrible, arguing that having to kill someone personally would distort the president's judgment so much that he might never push the button.
Part 1. The core psychology, immediate versus delayed consequences.
But you know what? That horrified reaction from the Pentagon brilliantly illustrates the core psychology of why we do what we do. We are literally wired to avoid immediate visceral pain. The crucial point here is that pain is an incredibly effective teacher, but only if there's absolutely zero gap between the action and the consequence. Think about it. If a plumber makes a huge mistake and gets an immediate terrible review, that pain forces them to instantly improve their work. But if the pain is delayed, like the long-term health consequences of eating junk food or skipping workouts, we just ignore it. We repeat bad habits because they serve us in the moment, and the punishment? Well, it's just too far in the future to feel real.
And this brings us to a massive, life-altering paradigm shift when it comes to behavior change. If the fourth law of behavior change is to make good habits satisfying, the inversion of that law is super simple. Make it immediately unsatisfying. If you want to eliminate an unhealthy behavior or force yourself to stick to a good one, you have to add an instant, unavoidable cost to the action. You've got to completely eliminate the gap between your laziness and the consequence.
Part 2. Societal Contracts to Personal Accountability.
Let's look at how this builds from a massive societal level all the way down to our personal daily routines. Because once you see this invisible architecture shaping society, you'll realize governments actually use this exact psychological principle on us constantly. Look at the New York seatbelt law back in 1984. Before this, only about 14% of Americans regularly wore seatbelts. But by introducing an immediate, reliable punishment, a fine that hits your wallet instantly, behavior shifted drastically. Today, over 88% of Americans buckle up. Whether it's banning smoking in restaurants or enforcing recycling, society functions by making bad behavior immediately painful.
Part 3. The Blueprint. Creating your own habit contract.
So how do we use this? Well, you can actually take that exact same government-level accountability and weaponize it for your own personal growth. Shortly after his son was born, an entrepreneur from Nashville named Brian Harris realized he needed to shed some weight and get healthy. But instead of just waiting around hoping for motivation to strike, he engineered a system. He started by mapping out a clear, staged roadmap for the year. He broke it down by quarters, starting with a strict slow-carb diet, then moving to macronutrient tracking, and finally refining his program to hit his long-term goal of 200 pounds at 10% body fat.
But a plan on its own, not enough. You need consequence. So Brian drafted a formal, written habit contract. He explicitly wrote down his daily habits, and then, and here is the real magic, he had himself, his wife, and his personal trainer physically sign this document. Now, at first glance, a signature might seem a bit overly formal, right? But as Brian noted, it forced an immediate psychological shift. It was a tangible, real-world indication of absolute seriousness.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tactical escalation he used. He didn't just list what he wanted to do, he listed the immediate punishment if he failed. If he failed to log his food, boom, he faced an immediate, painful consequence, paying his trainer $200. If he didn't weigh himself, he lost the privilege of wearing his comfortable clothes. He had to dress up every single workday and Sunday morning.
As Brian hit his targets and moved through the year, his goals upgraded. and so did the pain of failure. The punishments escalated to giving his wife $500 to spend on whatever she wanted, or, and this is perhaps the most psychologically painful one for him, if he forgot to run his sprints, he had to wear the hat of the Alabama Crimson Tide, the bitter rival of his beloved Auburn team, for the rest of the quarter. Now that is how you make failure immediately unsatisfying. And guess what? The strategy totally worked. He lost the weight.
Part 4. Automating accountability. No formal contract needed.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Drafting a legal-style document with financial penalties sounds a bit intense, and it definitely isn't for everyone. So, if a signed contract feels like way too much friction to start, how can you still leverage the painful social cost of failing in front of others? Because at our core, humans are social creatures, right? We desperately want to look good to our tribe.
The answer is surprisingly simple. Just get an accountability partner. Comedian Margaret Cho uses this exact tactic by writing a joke or a song every single day and sharing it with a friend in a daily challenge. This works flawlessly because we care deeply about the opinions of those around us. Suddenly, if you procrastinate, you aren't just letting yourself down in private, you are failing to uphold a promise to someone else. You risk looking untrustworthy or lazy to your friends, and that social pain, that is an incredible, immediate motivator.
And if you really want to get creative, you can even automate this social pain using technology. Take Thomas Frank, an entrepreneur from Boulder, Colorado. He wanted to force himself to wake up at 5:55 a.m. every morning, so he scheduled this exact tweet to go live automatically at 6:10 a.m. The only way to stop the tweet from broadcasting his laziness to the entire internet is to physically wake up and manually cancel it.
If he sleeps in, it instantly costs him $25 via PayPal to the first 5 people who reply, not to mention the immediate loss of his public pride. He has completely eliminated the gap between the lazy action of hitting snooze and the painful consequence. The punishment perfectly matches the strength of the behavior he's trying to change.
Part 5. Engineering your commitments.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, let's zoom out a bit and look at the foundational rules for engineering your own commitments moving forward. Because, look, motivation is a feeling. It will always fade. But a well-designed system of accountability stands firm. The source material we've explored today leaves us with a stark, undeniable reminder. We are far, far less likely to repeat a bad habit if the failure is immediately painful. To truly change your life, you have to bring the reality of your actions home, right into the present moment.
Knowing that someone else is watching you and intentionally tying a tangible social or financial cost to your inaction is the ultimate way to bridge the gap between your good intentions and your actual daily actions. I mean, we comb our hair and brush our teeth because we want a positive reaction from society, right? We can harness that exact same psychological need for approval to build unbreakable discipline.
So the only question left to ask yourself is this. What is the one behavior you are desperately trying to change right now? And what immediate, deeply unsatisfying consequence will you write into your very first habit contract today? Really think about it. Find an accountability partner and make the cost of failure just too painful to ignore. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.